Dear Lord, thank you for this Sabbath day that you've blessed us to receive. Thank you for the ability to come together using the technology that we have available to us to be able to share the message of equality. We ask that you will please guide and direct our minds as we seek to revise a study that had been given at the beginning of the Midnight Cry. I pray that you will pour out your Holy Spirit upon us, and grant us wisdom and understanding, clarity of thought and of mind, to see what you had put in place from the beginning of the Midnight Cry message and how you had given us prophetic justification to make these changes necessary that we may honour and glorify you and bring people to you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Elder Tess has been doing Friday night Vespers in Australia, which have been posted online for everyone to view. It's within the movement. During these Vespers on a Friday night, Elder Tess has asked a question of us. What has made us swing from a right-wing conservative mindset that we had from 2016 and prior to our left-wing liberal stance that we have now? So when she drew it out on the board, it looks like this. She drew a line. On the left hand of the line, she had, this is a left political ideology, and this is right wing. In 2016 and prior, we would have been found or acknowledged ourselves to be found on the right wing of the political spectrum. And we have made a decided change since then to somewhere here in the left wing, in the left sphere of our political mindset. She laid out 4 reasons at the beginning of the Midnight Cry, which she gave from the beginning of the message, 2018 and early 2019. There are 4 prophetic reasons that she laid out that we need to understand and that were given in the early message. These were listed as the moral majority, the Battle of Ipsus, and the study of Pyrrhus, 1996, with the formalization of 2 streams of information, and also the line of the Nethinims. And focusing on the order of our reform lines. So these were presented in late 2018 and early 2019 as part of the Midnight Cry message. Whenever God asks us to make a change, for example, from a right-wing conservative mindset over to a left-wing liberal mindset, God understands that God requires of us to have a So these justifications are listed here. These are the prophetic justifications that were given to us at the beginning of the Midnight Cry message. Ray has already gone over the moral majority, and today we are looking at Ipsus and the study of Pyrrhus. We can't simply change our mind based on the opinion of a person. Every person has an opinion of their own and their own thoughts and ideas. So God requires that political, that prophetic understanding for us to make those changes. Elder Terry went back and asked people to present on these four topics here to refresh our memories, for us to be able to understand and comprehend what Elder Tess is talking about during the Vespers. So just remember that these were in place from the beginning. One of the things Elder Tess has been going over during our Vespers is the complexity of a history as we are walking through that history. She drew it out on the board as a messy or complicated play of human events. It's a mess. It seems like there's no order. It seems like happenstance that things take place. And what God requires of us to do is to understand a history. But when we're looking at a history, particularly when we're walking through a history for ourselves, there's so much noise coming in that it makes it hard to distinguish what is the true information that we need to hold on to and to discern from what we need to discount as noise and what we need to hold on to. What God does is lays out a structure for us to be able to understand. A structure is a parable. So God will lay out a simple structure explaining a history, and this structure or parable is prophetic. What it's designed to do is to simplify a messy history in order for us to grasp some key concepts there that will help to understand what seems to be a complicated play of human events. It makes it easier to understand. God always gives us multiple witnesses. He gives us multiple parables. So in this complicated play of human events, God gives us a parable, but he won't just give us one. He'll give us multiple witnesses. He'll lay another parable over the top of it. As we look back through history, a lot of the noise is cut away from the topics and issues that we are trying to understand. So in a sense, it can be easier to look back because you're not confronted with the present day noise. But as we ourselves walk through this history from 1989 through to the present, we are bombarded with that noise and other issues and topics that arise. And we find it quite easy to get off track and derailed. So we're looking at the story of Ipsus and Pyrrhus. We're looking for the prophetic justification of why we've made the change from right-wing conservative mindset to a left-wing liberal mindset. To break this down and give us the answer straight away, there are two main reasons for this, and then we'll go through and we'll discuss those answers. One is the Battle of Ipsus itself, the Battle of Ipsus, who fights there, and the application of that battle that took place thousands of years ago. The second answer is the people who fought at Ipsus and their mindset, who the people personify and symbolize, or to symbolize is another word, that mindset and why they stand for those things. And then also the application of who those people were in our application, in our time, and what they stand for or stood for. We can see on the board here God has given us, from the beginning of the Midnight Cry message, there's more than this now, but from the beginning of the message, there are 4 parables that were given to us to explain this shift. What we do is we take an understanding of these studies. For example, the moral majority. This will give us a picture of why we've made that change from a right-wing to a left-wing mindset. That picture of itself is wonderful, but it gains much more power when we have multiple witnesses. So next we lay the story of Ipsus and Pyrrhus over the top of this parable. And it adds another layer of depth to the study and gives a more complete and holistic answer. And we can continue to do that for each of the prophetic reasons that God has given us to change our mindsets. When we overlay these reasons on top of each other, this gives us a holistic and complete answer of why we had to make that change, why it was necessary, and why God required us to make that change. What we also notice in this repeating pattern of overlaying lines is something that we see in Ezekiel's, is wheels within wheels. Is that within the study of Pyrrhus itself, God gives us repeated parables to grant greater understanding of a subject. These subjects are broken down into an alpha history and an omega history, which we've studied many times before, looking at the King of the South in its alpha history and the King of the South in its omega history. If you're able to turn in your Bibles, turn to Daniel 8, verse 8, please. Daniel 8:8 says, "Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven." So what are we looking at here? Daniel is in the time, if you scroll up to verse or turn your pages to verse 1, you'll see where Daniel is in history. He's standing in the reign of the Medes and the Persians. He has given a prophecy of what's to take place. There is a king to come and a kingdom described as being a goat that waxed very great and he's strong. And when he is strong, that horn is broken, and for it come four notable horns. So we want to pick up on the words that Daniel is using here. And notice the structure that Daniel lays out. The very first point that he brings up is the life, as we know, of Alexander. Alexander is the one who conquers the Medes and Persians and who sets up a kingdom, but he doesn't reign for very long. And then his death comes in 323. This is the death of Alexander. Shortly after this point, in the same sentence, Daniel mentions that the great horn is broken. This is the death. And then that the four horns come up from it. After the death of Alexander, there is a whole heap of generals who try and take control of Greece, either for themselves or to unify Greece. Historians will tell us that there are two types of generals who reigned during this period of Alexander's death. We have one type is a type that wants to unify Greece. And the second type is a type that wants to move on with their own understandings and forget about the past, forget about the founding father and what he stood for, but to forge their own way forward, forgetting the past. At the Battle of Ipsus, which is in 301 BC, we see the death of Antigonus. Antigonus marked the last general who had reigned during this period, who was trying to bring Greece together, trying to unify Greece. So in Daniel 8:8, Daniel has laid out a structure where he has marked the death of a person who was unifying Greece, and in the Battle of Ipsus, a death of a person who is trying to unify ancient Greece. What we see is a structure that Daniel is trying to let us know of something. If you to continue to look down through Daniel 8, verses 9 and afterwards, Daniel is talking about different powers that will come to reign after the Medes and Persians. So we know we have Medo-Persia, Greece, and we have Rome. In this period here, we see the death of Alexander, we see the death of Antigonus, and then we see nothing written after this history. We know that Greece continues on for a little bit longer, but what we want to mark here is that at this death of Antigonus, this Grecian Empire is already considered to have been given its death blow. So it doesn't have long to live until a greater kingdom will come up and overthrow it and rule. During this period here, we see 4 diadochi battles. The 4th war culminating in the Battle of Ipsus with the death of Antigonus. So what we want to see here is a cause and effect relationship in this structure that has been written up. We see the cause, Alexander, the first death of a person unifying Greece, and we see the final death of a person trying to unify Greece. The effect of this is that the kingdom of Greece is finally overthrown. So today we're going to focus on particularly the 4th battle here and the Battle of Ipsus. So we'll draw that out and see who is on site, who are the protagonists, and what they stand for. So in the Battle of Ipsus, we have 6 people on site. We have Antigonus, we have his son Demetrius, Demetrius has a general working for him or fighting for him called Pyrrhus. And this group of people are coming up against Seleucus, Cassander, and Lysimachus. These are studies that Elder Tess has done at the very beginning of the Midnight Cry message. So I'm laying them out in a basic form with the understanding that we have seen them and we are now reviewing those studies. What we want to identify with the structure that we had in place of Alexander and Antigonus The main point we want to see there is that Alexander is trying to unify Greece. Antigonus is trying to unify Greece. So keep that in your minds as we continue forward. Throughout the life of Pyrrhus, we see 4 battles. If this was the line of Pyrrhus up here, we know the line of Pyrrhus begins in 317 BC and goes all the way to the death in 272. Throughout this period of time, there are 4 major battles that take place. The Battle of Ipsus, Battle of Heraclea, Battle of Asculum, and the Battle of Beneventum. During these fights, there is a singular mode of warfare that is used in each of these 4 battles that determines the outcome or the victory. And we know back in ancient Greece that this was war elephants. And these elephants decided the battle, whether for a positive outcome for the person who used those war elephants or for a negative outcome for them. They determined the battle. So we're going to see the same mode of warfare used throughout these battles. So key points is there's 2 types of generals. The next what we want to look at is the name meanings of a couple of these generals. Antigonus, Monophelmus was his last name or his surname. His name means like the ancestor. So when we have a look at like the ancestor, we know for his kingdom, Antigonus was like Alexander. When we have a look at his son, Demetrius, we see a very different name. Demetrius comes from the goddess called Demeter. And the goddess of Demeter is the goddess of corn and of harvest. So what we want to do is see the names there, what they symbolize. Antigonus, meaning like the ancestor. Demetrius, who is backed by Pyrrhus, his name meaning corn and harvest. So we want to look at the names. When we're making an application of these histories, what we understand is that during this period of history, Pyrrhus's life, we see that all of these people are fighting within the same kingdom. After the death of Alexander, the generals try and take control. There's a lot of fighting going on within them, within their own country. So what we want to see is during this period, there is constant civil war. as we go to make an application of these studies, we understand that the Battle of Ipsus took place in 301 BC. And as we make application, 301 BC lines up with 2016. In 2016, we saw the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is represented in our parable here by Antigonus. Donald Trump, who is backed by the King of the South, in the line of Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus fighting for Demetrius. We understand that Vladimir Putin is backing Donald Trump. Antigonus name meaning like the ancestor. And we see that Hillary Clinton, as came from the words of Donald Trump, was, as he put it in a negative light, part of the establishment. Donald Trump used those words as a war propaganda against Hillary Clinton and all those who he could rally for his side. Being a part of the establishment is not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. We saw that if you were a part of the establishment, part of Alexander and a part of Antigonus, that your kingdom continued to reign. But with the destruction of the last people who were trying to unite Greece, we saw the final overthrow of Greece shortly after. So what we want to see is Antigonus representing Hillary Clinton is like the ancestors, and Donald Trump typified by Demetrius, who is bringing the world to harvest. If we were to put names to these applications, we understand that we have Hillary and Donald. If we were to look at like the ancestor, who would Hillary Clinton represent? And you would have to go back, like we did in our drawing, to see that Antigonus represented the founding fathers of Greece in Alexander. Hillary Clinton represents the founding fathers within America. George Washington would probably be a very good representation. Who stood for those ideals and values and principles that, if continued, would make America that land that it was designed to be. When we see the way Daniel in 8:8 lays out that history, we see that he's drawn a structure and he's given us Antigonus and Alexander. He provides us with an alpha and omega. Daniel lays out a structure that's in place for us to be able to follow. When we look at Antigonus and Demetrius fighting the three powers of Seleucus, Cassandra, and Lysimachus, what we see is Antigonus and Demetrius want the same thing. They want to be able to control these three powers. Demetrius and Antigonus don't fight each other. As we saw in the election, Hillary Clinton is not fighting Donald Trump, not trying to take their possessions. But both Hillary and Donald are in a race for these three spheres of government in the United States. They're broken down as the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the
Legislative.
thank you, legislative. Executive, judicial, and legislative branches of the US government. The story of Pyrrhus, his whole line from 317 right down to 272, is a parable of interactions of the king of the south with the king of the north. But at the same time, it is also a parable of civil war within the kingdom of Greece. So within this history here, we see a continual battle taking place within Greece, with Pyrrhus supporting people within Greece. Then towards the end of Pyrrhus's reign, we see clear battles between the king of the south and the king of the south and the king of the north. But within the Battle of Ipsus itself, we also see the play of events between the king of the south and the king of the north, with Pyrrhus supporting Demetrius. What we understand takes place is that Seleucus comes across and kills with these war elephants, this new mode of warfare here at the Battle of Ipsus, which is this civil war that we're talking about, which is what we're seeing taking place at 2016 at the election. The election of what turned out to be Donald Trump was civil war in America. And civil war could be called civil war because we see that that mode of warfare doesn't change throughout the histories that have taken place. So as we step back and look at the Battle of Ipsus and what took place in the 2016 election, we understand that that same mode of warfare is repeating throughout our reform line at 2018, 2019, 21, continuing on down to the Sunday law. It's just going to be subtle variations of the warfare we've already seen used. And that warfare you have witnessed for yourself. We have seen it in the articles that have been published. We have seen it in the two streams of information, in the bombardment of negative cyber warfare against people, individuals, and countries. These three people over here, Seleucus, Cassandra, and Lysimachus, representing the three tiers of government in the United States. It's interesting that Seleucus almost didn't make it to the battle. Antigonus, Demetrius, and Pyrrhus were set to fight against Cassandra and Lysimachus, and Seleucus only just turned up in time, right towards the end. And that was what caused the victory for these battling people here. Quite late through the election process, Hillary was looking like coming out as a winner of the election until James Comey made a statement saying that he was going to reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton. With that news, it sent their team into disaster mode, the Liberals team, the Democrats team, into a disaster mode to try and clean up the mess. It also swayed the minds of the voters. And where do we place James Comey? James Comey is the head of, or the leader of, the FBI and resides in these branches here. We understand that Demetrius is backed by Pyrrhus, the king of the south in the time of ancient Greece. We see that for ourselves today with the collusion that has been abundantly proven with Russia colluding with Donald Trump in the disinformation campaign that took place prior to the election and up to the election. So the story of Ipsus is our prophetic justification that shows us what we've observed in 2016 election. And what has also added weight to our prophetic studies is the accurate information that is being presented by journalists who have clearly identified what's been taking place around us, with the studies given on Cambridge Analytica and their workings behind the scenes in manipulating the elections that took place in multiple countries. The 2 points that we listed were the Battle of Ipsus and also what these two people stand for, what they represent, or how they personify their party. When we know that one of these names here, Hillary, means like the ancestor, and Donald means that, or Demetrius means that it's taking the world to call to harvest, it should be a clear and simple answer as to which side we take. But God also provides us with more information. As I spoke about before, Donald made a smear campaign against Hillary Clinton leading up to the 2016 election, that she was part of the establishment and that he was going to drain the swamp, which meant that he was not part of that establishment, that he was something separate, and that he would break the mold of presidents to come, and that he was going to make things right in America. He wanted to put America on top. He believed that in the preceding years to him, that America had become the laughing stock of the nation. He put a fear into the people around him that America wasn't that great, wonderful nation that rules first and supreme over all the world. Donald Trump was right when he said that Hillary Clinton was part of the establishment. The establishment is a good thing. He weaponized those words to mean something bad or very derogatory. And that's not the case when you use the words correctly. To be part of the establishment is to be a part of the established ways of thinking that were to be continued on through America's history in order to bring about a wonderful country to escape what they'd previously been a part of in Europe. So in 1996, we saw this warfare had been formalized. We see online papers come in that spread information quickly. We see two streams of information pop up that allows for easy access to what would be in the near future phones and internet, and every screen that we view, giving an opportunity to sow disinformation or cyber warfare within a country. And this has been successfully done throughout the 2016 election, to the point where recent surveys have shown that most of America still can't see that there was some form of collusion between Russia and Donald Trump, between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. The disinformation warfare is there and is designed to distort our view of reality. And in that distortion of reality, it is able to get us to believe what we may currently hold on to, or be unwilling to release our unclear mind that we have presently, unwilling to receive correction or reproof. So what we want to look at is a few points that we see in the difference of mindsets between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Leading up to the election, there were a whole heap of campaign ads going out and speeches given. During these ads and speeches, each of these candidates tell you why they are the right person for the job as the President of the United States and what they are going to do to help America. We're going to list some of the things that these two parties do, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and then contrast them against each other and see what is the mindset behind their choice and how they stand. Each of these people here, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, personify or symbolize the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party. Allowing us to see who these people stand for, what they stand for, and the mindset that we need to be aware of. One of the first things we'll touch on is that Donald Trump talked about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is known as Obamacare. So Donald Trump and the Republican Party do not want to allow easy access to some sort of what we would call in Australia Medicare, or in America Medicaid, which is allowing access to proper healthcare for the people of America. So on the subject of healthcare, Hillary Clinton wants to expand the options that are available and grant more healthcare to people. To a wider ranging group of people. And Donald Trump says, no, they can just pay for it in other ways. So he wants to say less options. He wants to repeal Obamacare. When we see their stance on immigrants coming into the country, we understand quite clearly that Donald Trump wants to build a wall. He wants to triple the number of ICE officers. He wants to deport all criminals, or as he would term them, aliens. And he wants to defund sanctuary cities in America. Sanctuary cities are places where immigrants can come over and have some form of sanctuary from the ICE officers. He wants to end birthright citizenship. So we see that Donald Trump is against immigrants coming in. He wants to build a wall. And we understand that Hillary Clinton supports the DREAM Act and a path to legalization for illegal immigrants coming in, and including helping to pay for language classes to help them to better integrate into society, and to support cities that are supporting immigrants. So help support immigrants. We know and should see quite clearly that Donald Trump has talked about the concept of global warming as being created by, as he terms, Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive. We understand that the whole Republican Party, personified by Donald Trump, is against global warming or does not agree with it. And we understand from Hillary Clinton's point of view or the Democratic point of view is that we need to cap our emissions, we need to reverse the effects of the damages that are being done to the world and initiate harsh measures and taxes to try and avoid the environmental impact and footprint that we're leaving. We understand in tax policies that Donald Trump wanted to eliminate tax in some brackets, and this was going to cost the government trillions of dollars. So less tax. And we understand that the Democrats want higher tax brackets or higher tax charges on high income earners and less on the lower income earners. The reason why it makes sense that you would see the Democrats wanting to increase the tax on the higher income earners is because we understand that a Democrat's point of view is to look at big government. They need big government in order to help with overseeing all the infrastructure that they want to set in place for the protection of minority groups. And so in order to do so requires more tax to come in, but to tax the wealthy at a greater rate. We understand the position on gun rights quite well. The Republican Party are all for guns, and the Democrat Party want to limit the guns that are in place in America. The minimum wage. Donald Trump wants people to continue to work at the minimum wage without raising the minimum wage. And Hillary Clinton was looking at massively increasing the minimum wage. And the final point that I'll put down there is that Donald Trump wanted to cut the EPA. The EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency. And what that does is hold people and businesses accountable for their pollution of the earth and their policies that they have set in place in big businesses as well, to make sure that the correct disposal of products is taking place instead of illegal dumping or the misuse of the way we dispose of things. So obviously, we understand that the EPA, Donald Trump has said that he wants to remove. And the Democrats want to expand the powers. So why are we looking at two people and their their election promises to the people way back in 2016. The reason why we're looking at that is because these two people, Hillary Clinton, who was like the ancestors, the same as Antigonus was, stood for something. And what she stood for, along with the Democratic Party, was a way of viewing people and a way of existing. And we see that Donald Trump, typified by Demetrius, stood for something else, who was backed by the King of the South. There were two types of generals in that time. We had people who wanted to unify Greece in ancient Grecia, and we had people who wanted to go their own way. Hillary Clinton wanted to unify the United States like the founding fathers. We see that Donald Trump wanted to forge his own way, doing his own things. These two people personifying what these parties represent and how it's important for us to understand these things. We look at their name meaning. We understand that the name, like we just said a moment ago, represents like the ancestors. Clinton representing the ancestors of our George Washington, and Donald Trump meaning he's taking the world to harvest. When we look at these options that are here on each side, what they stand for, we want to view that in light of the studies taking place during Vespers, we saw that one party is based on equality, and the other is on freedom. Another way to put that is that the Democrats are going to put equality over freedom where minority groups are going to be affected, and the Republican Party are going to put freedom over the top of equality or to affect minority groups. And this is visible here in their healthcare. Healthcare should be affordable for all the people, but the Republican Party are going to say no, it should be for some people. The Republican Party aren't going to let immigrants in. The Democratic Party are going to say, yes, we need to allow for these people to be able to come in. We need to help them integrate into society. They are useful, they are beneficial, they are people. The Democratic Party are going to say we need to protect the earth. And the Republican Party are going to say no. The reason for that, or part of the reason for that, is they want the freedom to be able to do what it is that they're doing, build their businesses, create their empires. But they also don't want a large government. Republican parties like small government because it gives them the freedom to be able to continue with their policies that allow no carbon charges and to move away from global warming. It's also the same reason why they want to remove the EPA. The big government also has a branch of big government in EPA, in the Environmental Protection Agency. And this agency monitors the work of these businesses and individuals to make sure that the earth is being protected as much as possible. And so this government branch, they want to do away with completely. We see the minimum wage and less tax also taking place there, and how that affects America in detrimental ways. And we see the positive gains given by the Democrat Party there. Trump also wanted to, would as much as possible like to get rid of NATO, whereas Hillary Clinton would have liked to have worked with them more. So at the core of each of these parties is an issue that they believe they stand for above all else. And one would be freedom under the Republican Party and equality under the Democratic Party. So we can see the civil war that has taken place in America from 2016, the war of cyber warfare taking place. We see two groups of people personified by these two people, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and their war for the three powers of government, that they would become the president, that they would win over the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. What we understand from Antigonus Monothelmus was 80 years old at the Battle of Ipsus, and prior to the Battle of Ipsus, Antigonus had lost one eye. And what we're going to do is relate the eyes, the literal eyes of Antigonus to the horns of republicanism and Protestantism. So long ago, the USA broke the horn of Protestantism back in the 1800s. And then we see with the death of Antigonus at the Battle of Ipsus, both of his eyes were closed. With the closing of both the eyes of Antigonus, there was now no one left in ancient Grecia to want to unify Greece in order to be able to make it what it was again. As with America, at the 2016 election, with the election of Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton being the final person who was trying to unify America based on the founding principles of the people who founded America, has failed and can never be undone. The horn can never be unbroken. The Republican horn has now been broken in America, which does not mean the Republican Party. The Republican horn is broken. And now America will have a short period of time, and like in Daniel, it will continue to exist, but it can never be restored. It can never be made right. So we will close there for time. If you're able to, can you please kneel with me and we'll close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day that you've blessed us to receive. Thank you for the Sabbath. Thank you for prophecy. Thank you for, at the very beginning of this message, you have laid out the principles for our change of mindset, the methodology, and the prophetic justification. I pray that we will each individually grasp these justifications, these prophetic waymarks that you have put in place, comprehend what you're teaching us, and understand equality properly, that we may see that equality must reign supreme over freedom, where the rights of minority groups are removed. I ask that you'll grant us greater wisdom and understanding and clarity as we seek to continue to understand these two opposing parties and our mindset, that we may change and become much more holistic and useful to be able to reach a greater audience. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.